Hey there, we are Rob and Joanna Tigan. Welcome back to the Growing Home Together podcast. We've been married for over 30 years and we've parented our 5 kids through all the ages and stages. We're excited to share our passion for caring for the soul of your family with you. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Thank you so much for joining me for the Growing Home Together podcast today. You know, a few weeks ago, Rob and I passed the 17th anniversary of our family's move to Michigan from Oregon. And if I think back on the year before that move, there's just one word that comes to my mind, and that is burnout. I had been homeschooling all 4 of our kids from kindergarten, 9th grade. I was working almost 30 hours a week. I was serving on the worship team at church and hosting a small group and managing our busy household. And this was all while Rob was traveling over half the weeks of the year for work. And we didn't have any local family to lean on. So by the time we had gone through all the work of selling the house and packing up to move and traveling across the country to Michigan, I was done. And I just remember in the weeks after we got here, I would find myself just sitting on the couch, kind of staring into space. And my kids were at school, so I wasn't teaching them myself, and we didn't have a church to serve in. I was new in town, so I didn't have any friends to hang out with. And just the absolute quiet and stillness was such a shock to my system after being too busy for too long. But, you know, in that time, I remember a lot of healing happened. God felt so close, and I got to know him as my best friend. And Rob and I had lots of time to reconnect and get close. I could focus on my health and just having fun. And I think I had to reach that place of burnout to kind of get to know myself again and to find a pace of life that was healthy for me and our family. But I know that I am not alone in feeling that overwhelm and exhaustion. And I think so many of us are filling up our lives with really good things, but we're carrying this question inside. How can I live my priorities without burning myself out? And that is why I am so glad to welcome our guest today, Kelsie Zarko, to have a mom-to-mom conversation about finding balance in our lives. Kelsie is a former 2nd grade teacher turned business owner, a wife and mom of 2, and a committed believer in Christ. And Kelsie has set just this amazing example for me of what it means to pursue her passions with wisdom and grace. And I just know she's going to help and encourage you too. So thank you so much, Kelsie, for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. That was such a kind introduction.
Can you help everybody get to know you a little bit? Just you, your family, the business that you're in right now?
Yeah, I would love to. So like you said, my name's Kelsie. I'm married to my husband, Matt. We will celebrate 14 years of being married this summer, so that's exciting. And we have 2 kids, a 5th grade daughter and then a 1st grade son. And much to my chagrin, we do have a dog, and I'm loving to becoming a dog mom. No one is more surprised than me. So we added that to our life in the last couple of years. We are both originally kind of from up north near you. We grew up in Illinois, and we both lived there our whole lives. And then 7 years ago, we relocated to Dallas. So we are now Texans and love it. My husband is on staff at our local church, the Village Church here in Dallas. And then I have worked in a lot of different settings over the years, but currently loving the privilege of owning my own business. I started Curate about a year and a half ago, where I manage content for business owners, solopreneurs, people who just need their brain space back and want the partnership and understanding Instagram and email and the wild animal that can feel like. So that's what I get to spend my days doing.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah. And wow, Illinois to Dallas, that is a change.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you like to spend your time when you're not being mom or working?
That's a great question. There's not a ton of that time, I don't feel like, but some of my hobbies, and maybe even more than hobbies, just things that I've learned to have kind of replenished me. So we do just try to make time for them, for each other, my husband and I. We love CrossFit. We're those people. And so we love to go to the gym. A lot of our friends and just friends from church go to that same gym. So it's kind of a fun physical activity, but also just getting to like be around our people at the same time. So we love that. I am a pretty big book nerd. So pretty much every night before bed, I fall asleep reading my Kindle. I'm trying really hard to read more nonfiction, but I definitely prefer to read fiction. And then just anything where I can be outside, which does definitely come in handy. Living in Dallas, the weather's a little nicer here, but we just moved last summer to a new neighborhood and it has gorgeous walking paths and huge trees and there's a lake. So just getting out and walking, honestly, as boring as those habits sound, that's my favorite.
No, that sounds amazing. Maybe you should tell us if there's a book we should be reading right now. Do you have any recs for us?
Oh man, I have to look up the name of the author, but I just found a new kind of historical fiction author that I'm loving. She writes different time periods. I've done like the Revolutionary War, even like Oregon Trail times or the Civil War, things like that. Her name's Amy Harmon, but I love she's been a new fun find for me. Most of her main characters are women. They're definitely not sugar-coated books. They kind of dive into the hardship of what it was like to be a woman in that time. So I've enjoyed those.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks. That's great. I'll check those out. Well, I'm guessing over the years and all the things that you invest in that there must have been a time when you kind of reached your own place of overwhelm. And I'm just wondering about your perspective. How do you think as women, especially, we can burn ourselves out?
I feel like that is such a multifaceted question. So good. I was kind of thinking about this as I knew I was going to be talking to you on this topic. I kind of feel like there's two different burnouts I've personally experienced. Like I think we get to the burnout that's like, oh, I'm burnt out today or like this week, like this small portion of time I'm feeling burnt out. And it's not maybe as hard to climb out of that hole. I know sometimes I just literally need to like brain dump on a huge whiteboard and like loop my husband into like, hey, I'm not doing okay today. And then we can kind of like baby step our way out. And then I definitely think there's those longer seasons, even like you were sharing at the beginning of this conversation of like, I have hit a wall. Like I am not okay, might not be okay for a while. And this just feels a little bit more all encompassing in, every part of my life. If I try to think about ways maybe I've reached it in my life, I think it could come a number of ways. Sometimes it's just a long, harder season of like, I think about when my kids were babies, like that's just a different emotional and physical and like less sleep. Like that whole combination feels like it can be a physical burnout that bleeds into other spaces too. Maybe sometimes for me, it's been a season that doesn't fit anymore, but I'm still trying to make it fit. So things are just not working. We need to adjust things, but you're still trying to live in the old ways that were working for a while. They're not always bad things. Like you said, they're good things. They just don't fit anymore. And I also think, I would love your thoughts on this too, but I think different age seasons, like sometimes, how, as much as this probably ages me to say, how I operated as a 20-year-old, I cannot operate that way anymore. And I'm 36, so I understand I'm really not that old, but it's just a different way my body feels, different way my perspective and priorities have shifted. There's also like hormones and all of that to play too. So like I said, I just think there's so many different ways we could go with that conversation. And I think all of those things play into it.
Yeah, I like that you're kind of presenting this idea of seasons in a way, really. I know with what you were saying, this is my season to go to bed early. I never thought I would be a go to bed early kind of gal, but I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference in just how I get out of bed in the morning and my mindset. And then I love what you were saying about how what fits today might not fit yesterday, or it might not fit tomorrow. And you have me thinking about my work. My job when we were back in Oregon was very solitary. And so I would head off to my desk and kind of hunker down and put my hours in, and that was it. And now I find solo work to be really exhausting. I'm so much more energized by working with other people and working in community. And so that was great for then. I think it was nice to get away from the crazy and be by myself. But now I would find that really draining. So that was a really great insight.
Yeah, I think that maybe for the people listening to whether it's with motherhood or like schooling options, or like you were saying with work options, there is so much that changes. And I think that's probably been true forever, but it does seem like in our culture now, there's just a lot of different like transient opportunities and things change. And so to not be afraid to step into like a new season and not feel like everything has to be the same about your life from when your kids are born until they graduate or whatever that is. There will probably be a lot of shifts in there. At least that's what I'm experiencing right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's say that a new opportunity falls in your lap, but you have to look at the rest of your life. So what kind of shapes your decisions about what you're going to pick up or what you're going to set aside?
So a couple of years ago, my husband and I had a chance to sit down and kind of do what they call a life plan. And I think that gave us a lot of tools that have helped us with this. Part of that was really digging more deeply into like what our unique gifts are and our talents are. Part of that was even just establishing a family vision statement. I mean, and these are things that don't have to exist inside of a life plan. This is just my context for that experience. Part of that was also coming up with a family vision statement. So kind of looking at what do we want the next 10 years, in 10 years, what do we want to happen? And I feel like when you have some of those lenses and filters to look through, that's helpful because decisions can be super overwhelming. They are to me. There's so many good things we have access to. And so you can even feel that guilt of, oh, is it bad if I say no to this? Am I a bad mom? Am I a bad Christian? Am I a bad, fill in the blank? But when I had more of a lens to filter an opportunity through, does this use the gifts I feel like I have? Does this set us up for, if in 10 years, what we care about is that our kids, friends, call our home safe and that they feel welcome here, well, I'm going to more easily say yes to an opportunity with like a friend coming over from school or like, a certain volunteer opportunity than something that's going to take me out of my house from the after school hours. That's just an example of maybe like how I would filter something. So giftings and family vision help us, my husband and I, have conversations for our yeses and nos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear a lot of intentionality in that. That's really great. And what you said just about how decisions can feel overwhelming. And man, if there's anything about life as a mom, it's that you are constantly having to pivot, it seems like. So just thinking about these last few weeks in Michigan, how do you respond to an interruption like a snow day or 3 snow days or whatever, or kids getting sick? We're coming off sick season too. And how can you kind of adapt and hang on to your values and your priorities with situations like that without letting all of your rhythms kind of fall apart?
Yeah, we can speak to that for sure. Our kids have had a rough season. We just switched this year from homeschooling to public school, and they have been sick every single week since we went back to school in January, except for 2 weeks. So we're on a Wednesday today as we're recording, and they are healthy. So praying that stays true. That's been a really unique situation. And then, of course, the whole blizzard and all the cold snap that came through, we had a whole week off of school right after you go back. So totally can relate to just that feeling of constant interruptions. I think a couple things that have helped me are sometimes, you said like, how do you do that without your rhythms falling apart? Sometimes they just fall apart. And I think taking the pressure off my shoulders of like, this is not a normal week, so it's not going to look normal, and maybe not fighting to have my hands grasped so tightly around what is typical for me on a normal week, and just letting that be a little looser of like, hey, they're going to watch a movie while I, go do the top priority things that I need to focus on. And then I'm going to sit with them and, things are going to look different. So not holding on as tightly. And then I really have had to coach myself in just my mindset of, none of this is life or death. Most people, sure, maybe if you're like a doctor or something, our work really isn't life or death. It's important. It matters. I want to keep my commitments to my clients and I want to do exceptional work, but I also know that all of my clients are humans. And so I've learned to just say, hey, this is a unique week at our house. We're off school because of the weather or my kids are sick. And so I'll get back to you within 24 hours, but you just may hear from me a little less, or I may be a day late on that. And just being honest, and kind of most people really, really do not care. And we put more pressure on ourselves than needs to be there.
Sure. That makes sense. And I like the communication that you were talking about. I think maybe we forget that most people really are willing to give grace. And sometimes people give us more grace than we give to ourselves. So that's really good.
Yeah, totally. We get stuck in our mind and tell ourselves all these stories and lies of it's all on my shoulders. It's all depending on me. And we just have to step outside of that and live in community and communicate and then give ourselves fair expectations on those weeks that are just not normal.
Yeah, definitely. You had mentioned that you are very into CrossFit, and I'm guessing that is part of self-care for you. Self-care has not always come naturally to me to even be able to do that mindfully or intentionally. Can you just share with us how you would define self-care in your own life?
I think about self-care as how am I going to replenish? There are lots of things I can do to rest that are not bad things, but they're not really going to like re-energize me. I'm just going to be more tired when I'm done with them, or they'll, like a Netflix show I love, but it's just going to like make me fall asleep. And then I won't necessarily always get back up and be energized personally. So for me, thinking about things that will re-energize me mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, kind of working through that is a helpful paradigm for me. Physically, I would say, yeah, CrossFit, walking, getting outside, and truly like even sleeping. That is something I had to learn so hard in the last few years of you actually cannot survive on 5 to 6 hours of sleep. I really do need closer to 7 or 8. And so those things, I think mentally, having good conversations with friends, laughing really hard, like just making space for those things that I know replenish me is how I would maybe define self-care in my everyday life.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Yeah, I was thinking about your remark about your dog. I am all about my dog, I have to say. And we both have doodles, don't we?
Yes, I remember you always had such cute pictures and stories about your dog. We got a golden doodle 2 years ago. She just turned 2.
Okay, that's so fun. Well, I think our doodle is there to remind me that I need self-care because walking her is one of the most energizing things that I do. And I think if I didn't have her, I would forget that that is something in my toolbox.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. I think we can fall into that mindset as women that we have to do it all, that we should be able to do it all. And, I remember my mom when I was growing up, she always had to work full time. Every meal was cooked from scratch. I had these incredible lunch boxes full of incredible things that she made for me. She made a beautiful yard and garden, and my mom just seemed unstoppable. My mom is a remarkable lady, and I just seemed to somehow internalize that I should just be able to do everything. And then you discover that you can't. And then we can just kind of heap that guilt on ourselves, when we run up against our own limitations. What would you say to the woman today who's just feeling so less than because she's struggling with that in herself?
I see this so much with my friends right now. We get together every 2 weeks and just kind of sit up in this upstairs room we have, and we have some questions we go through. And I feel like it's such a prevalent thing where women just feel guilty or less than because XYZ. And I do think not as practical as it sounds, this is a deeper question, but I think it's the root of it is there's something somewhere in our story that there's a lie that we're believing. And I think it just it speaks to us all day long of you're supposed to be this, or you're supposed to be this, and you're not. So therefore you are less than, or you're not measuring up, or whatever it is. So this isn't something that is going to be a quick fix, but I do think it's worth considering, maybe that's with counseling or just looking at your story and thinking about where did you start believing that that's who you had to be. We all have a different lie that speaks to us, but a lot of them are rooted in love or hopelessness or, things like that. So that's kind of an overarching question. And then the other part of that that's maybe more practical is I do think going back to that seasons conversation is what kind of has unlocked this for me. I do work full time right now. And before that, I have always worked and homeschooled my kids at the same time. And that was a hard combination for me. For a long time, it worked great for us. And then all of a sudden it didn't. And I wonder if that's where sometimes those less than or guilty feelings pop up of this was working great and now it's not. And so it must be my fault. And that's where I would say to dig into, are you holding on to a season that needs to change? For us, that was our kids started to go to public school and they have been fine. There were so many lies that come up, and I'm sure your listeners could identify in various ways. For me, it was like homeschooling to public school. There's other things. It was just a season where it needed to change, and we are flourishing so much more now than we were before. And that doesn't mean that other season was bad and we were doing it wrong. It was just time for something new. So I have to avoid that always or never mentality. For the person listening, if you're feeling like something was working and now it's not and it's your fault, loop somebody into that conversation. Talk about that. Because I think there's probably way more under that than just this weight you're carrying by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think when I was talking to you about my mom, what I was expressing really was basically comparison, right? Mm-hmm. And I heard she just challenged me so much recently to really pay attention to when comparison is driving that feeling, because am I looking at who someone else is to define me, or am I asking the Lord who I am by his design, And she used the word capacity. Like, my mom happened to have a lot of capacity. My mom still has a lot of capacity. And kind of the joke with my daughters and I are that if you go shopping with grandma, she can shop you into the ground. She just has batteries somewhere that I don't know where they are, but she's amazing. She's just a high capacity person, and that is okay. It makes her unique and special. And my capacity by comparison isn't worse. It's just different, If I see that more as how the Lord has formed me, then I can celebrate it rather than comparing it and looking down on it. That helps me.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think too, as somebody whose business is literally built on social media, it's a double-edged sword. I do think there's so much good there, but I would also caution all of us to look at our inputs and figure out, is there something even that I'm watching someone else do? And then, like you said, is that driving me to compare and thinking, oh, well, I'm watching this person do this, so I must need to do that. That isn't true at all. We all live in different contexts and different seasons. And then something else you said, I love that you honored like the high capacity part of your mom. I've had some really interesting conversations with friends where I'm kind of a high capacity person, maybe less than I used to be. I do think this might be changing about me in just different seasons, but it can sometimes make people who are high capacity feel like guilty or less than for having high capacity. And people are like, oh, I just don't know how you do it all. And then you start to ask yourself, am I missing something? Like, am I doing all of this? And someone else has this secret to like what they're paying attention to that I've just totally missed. So from both sides of the spectrum, people who are high capacity and people who have a different capacity, we're all still telling ourselves the same story, even if it's rooted in different contexts. So I just thought that was interesting that you brought that up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And I know for me too, when I look at what's in front of me, I can't really separate what's on my plate from my relationship with Rob, my husband, because our lives impact each other so much and we want to do life together. And I think that was probably the hardest aspect of when things got really out of control in Oregon, was we had started to just divide and conquer to get it all done rather than really approaching life as a team. And so that was something we had to work our way back to after we came here to Michigan. So I would just love to know, in your marriage, how do you and Matt sustain a close relationship when your lives are full?
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think there are certainly times where we have just kind of played, zone defense of like, okay, you go do this and you go do that, and here's how we're going to divide that. And sometimes that's a gift. It is a gift. I have a couple of friends who are single moms, and I just honor and respect them so much for the load that they carry without the ability to divide it all the time. So there are seasons where we do that. I think we've gotten better identifying like, hey, this is a really full time. We're going to divide and conquer, and maybe not, maybe be more ships passing in the night for like a week or two, but not letting that become like, oh, this is just how we operate now. So a couple of things we love to do to just give us more time together. Some friends we went on a marriage retreat one time encouraged us to do talk time. And so when our kids, after dinner, we send them, they clear their plates and then they like go jump on the trampoline or go play or do something. And we're like, give us 10 minutes. And we just sit at the table and it's like, hey, you're not allowed to talk to mom and dad right now because we're talking to each other. And so just that little touch point without interruption. And we also have set aside 1 week a night to just kind of have what we call a marriage meeting. And it's not really that fancy. We do try to ask each other some helpful questions. We'll ask each other like, hey, what's the number between 0 to 10 that you're coming into this week on, just to get a feel for where each other are. But then we also do very practical things like look over our calendar for the week, look over our budget. But those are some things that can really throw you into chaos when you don't have that quick touch point on those things. So it has made a big difference for us just with those two rhythms of touch points.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, and I know for Rob and I, we have a master calendar that we have to live by, or we're not going to show up where we need to be.
Yep.
And I guess treating our relationship and putting it at the same level as all the other commitments in the week. So it's amazing how if we write in time on the calendar, we show up so faithfully. Rather than, I hope we could squeeze it in eventually. That's a little too vague. Yeah, just simply planning it gets us away for sure. And we didn't used to do that when we were younger marrieds, but that's been a great tool for us.
Yeah, same. I think putting it on the calendar and setting the time aside it just shows it's a priority and it matters.
Yeah. Well, I know that your relationship with Christ is such a significant part of just who you are, and it drives everything for you. And I know that includes the way that you manage your time. So can you just kind of share with us how your faith shapes your priorities and the way that you just do your life from week to week?
This is a great question. You had sent me a few of the questions to consider ahead of time, and this one was a good challenge to me of, I know it does, but have I really considered that lately? So I'm so grateful you asked it to me. I think something I've been learning lately is just, it's not going to sound like a breakthrough or anything, but really trying to operate out of Christ's love for me. When I get insecure or outside of that, that can really make me start to approach my schedule as a way that I am earning love, or I'm earning significance, or I'm operating out of guilt, or just, not secure in my relationships with other people or my tasks or my responsibilities. So, as simple as it sounds, just staying grounded in what I know is true about how Christ does love me, how I'm safe in his love. That has impacted me a lot lately. I also think taking the time to pray over our commitments, over our schedules. When I sit down for work in the morning, I kind of have a little mantra is not the right word, but just a few lines I try to say that set me for the day. It kind of puts my schedule in the right place, I guess I would say, underneath just who I am and what I believe. And I want that to spill over into everything I do. So I guess what I'm really communicating is just grounding myself in what I know is true about the Lord and true about me, so that I can approach what I say yes to, what I say no to, the people that are in my schedule, the work that's in my schedule, in a way where I'm not needing those things to fulfill me, but they're an overflow of who I know sustains me.
Oh, I love that. And I love what you were saying even about prayer, because these things are complicated. And sometimes we just don't really know. But we have a God who promises to answer our prayers and to give us wisdom when we need it. And just even with these mundane decisions, he wants to be in it. Today, actually, our son has an appointment and it bumps right into a meeting at church. And so Rob and I are in the kitchen, who's going to do what, And we didn't really know, because those are both important things to us to be part of. So we literally prayed and then flipped a coin, because it's God knows how our day should end.
I love that.
And it was just very stress relieving to know we're going to go where God is putting us. And he says that he gave us his Spirit, and that we can keep in step with the Spirit. God's pace is just right. And he says that we can make all the plans we want to, but he's the one that's ordered our steps. And so for me, I find that very reassuring, that I can just kind of rest and know that he's got us where he wants us if we're paying attention to him.
Yeah, absolutely. When you said pace, that made me think of a really dear friend of mine who she spent a lot of time this summer writing and teaching about just imaging Christ's pace. And I think that's another great reminder to us with burnout and capacity and schedules, that our culture has dictated a pretty fast clip of a pace, and we don't have to opt into that. There are so many things that are full and good in life. I do believe in keeping our commitments and working hard into the Lord. And it's not just that we sit around all day. I do think that we have to push back on leaving margin for even just work he has for us. I think of a situation with our neighbors this week where if we would have been gone all night long, we wouldn't have been here for it. So leaving room for him to bring us things, and then leaving room for rest, because he does model that too. So jamming our schedule full to the edges, I think that can lead to burnout, and he offers us a different way.
That's good. Yeah. And I love what you were saying about really living in his love, because I will say I really fell on my face with that, because I found out after we had moved that all of my roles had been stripped away. I was no longer homeschool mom. I was no longer employee. I was no longer vocalist, all of these things that had really become who I was, even to myself, were just lifted off. And then you're sitting with the question, well, then who am I? Right. Yeah. So it sounds like the Lord has really spoken to you in that area. What would you tell a mom like you? Like, now you're no longer homeschool mom, but like, how that feels. Yeah. Making those shifts. Do you have any other insight that you could share on that idea?
Yeah, I do think the security and the love of Christ has been huge for me. It really did uproot a huge lie about performing and, like our accomplishments and being impressive being what brings us value. That is such a lie. But then outside of that, I think knowing my gifts really helped inform my roles. So being a business owner or being a homeschool mom or a public school mom, like those are just ways my gifts are working themselves out right now. The things that God gave me as gifts are always going to be true, and they're going to be able to show up in different roles. So on one hand, I would say to someone, just ask the Lord how you can use how he's gifted you with where he's put you right now. Those places he put you are going to change, but those gifts are going to stay the same. The other thing I would say, there can be a lot of grief. And I do think it's important to grieve. Like, I'm sure when you moved, a whole new state feels like a whole new world sometimes. And there is a lot of excitement and good things, but there can be just grief too and change. And so letting yourself feel that and work through it, but also just remembering and considering there could be a lot of good on the other side of a role change. I was so sad about not being a homeschool mom and just like losing that. It's just a different opportunity with my kids that I had, and I had to work through that. But like we say almost every week, my husband and I are like, oh my goodness, this season is so good. Like, this was the right choice. This is, they needed this. And so to just give it some time to show you what a new season and a new role might bring. I guess I keep bringing up seasons. So that's the theme of this conversation.
That sounds good. Yeah. And with that, I don't think that there has ever been a time that God has asked me to lay something down, that he didn't give something really beautiful back to me in that, even if it was more of himself. True. We think that these are going to be losses that are going to be so maybe even hurtful or harmful. There's a difference between the grief you're describing and actually harm happening. Yeah. That's just a natural emotion of having to release something that we love. But yeah, God would never ask us to lay something down or step away from something that wasn't ultimately for him to just pour good onto us. So.
It makes me think of, is it Psalm 16 that says, in your presence, there is fullness of joy? Like, what you were saying about if a role change means that we end up getting more of him. I remember having a moment when I was praying and reading one day where we did not get something we wanted. We wanted it really badly. And that verse came to me and it was like, okay, you are not going to just have me live in disappointment forever. Like that's not what you promised us. You promised us there's fullness of joy, and it might look really, really different than I want it to. But if his presence is what we get, then he does promise us there will be joy in that.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I know, just because I know you, switch tacks a little bit here. You are so good at sifting out really practical tools to just make things run well. I was hoping that you could just give us some of those tips, like for somebody who feels like they're just always putting out fires or the tyranny of the urgent or whatever. Like, are there tools that you love?
Yeah, I don't know that I have very many fancy ones, but I do have just some like practical, really easy ones. So I think that might be helpful. First of all, you mentioned this too, but we have a shared calendar in our family. We just use like the Apple calendar and, attaches to both of our phones. And so that's really helpful that I don't feel like I'm having to tell my husband what's happening. Like both of us are putting things on the calendar and we can both see them. So I love that. As a mom, one of the most helpful little tools for managing my time has been using my reminder app and just talking to Siri. When something comes up, like if a calendar comes home from school and it's like, wear red today, I immediately just go through and I just tell Siri, hey, remind me on this day to lay out red clothes. Remind me on this day to return library books. I don't even try to remember it anymore because I know I am not going to. And we have this technology, so I may as well ask it to remind me. So that's very simple, but very helpful. I do also love for a business owner. So for your listeners who maybe are managing businesses and tasks and maybe even having a few employees and a household and all that comes with being a parent, I love using Asana for work. It's a project management tool and it can be pretty cost effective, especially if you don't have a giant team that you're managing. That's been a great place for me to just leave my work brain at work. I don't have to keep it in my mind because it's kept in that program and that platform. So we've used that for years, both with my old company that I met you through and then my current one now. So those are a couple of tools. And then just a mindset. You had asked me this question and I thought I wanted to include this in it. I have learned as a mom that the most helpful thing to help me manage my time is to avoid so much context switching. When I was a homeschool mom and working at the same time, there would be so often that I would try to help this kid with math while answering this email and, do this and do that at the same time. And I really just had to learn, at least for my personality, this could work for some people. But for me, that was not helpful at all. So one of the most helpful time managers is just saying, okay, for this hour, I'm working on work. For this hour, my kids are home and I'm putting my computer away and we're just chatting and doing homework and eating snack. And it almost just helps my brain feel like it can just rest in that space for wherever I need to be more present, be more intentional. Context switching, I learned that drains me super fast and I think leads me to more burnout. So avoiding that has been a game changer.
Oh yeah, that's really good. You're right. I'll think I can do 2 or 3 things at the same time. And really, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes great, but not often.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good. Yeah. And I know for us, I don't know if it's a tool exactly, but the whole idea of a list, if I write it down, I'm going to get it done. If I don't write it down, it's a who knows. I hope I get it done.
Yes, it's so true.
Yeah. And then even things like running errands, you could just fritter away every afternoon on those random errands. But if I put a piece of paper on the counter and I start jotting down the things, the family will come in too, and they'll jot down the things. So we're all getting everything in one place and I can consolidate stuff. That's been a big deal for me. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I never thought I was a verbal processor, but in the morning, if I say out loud, this is going to be the flow of my day, there's something about it that sort of locks it in for me.
That's so true. Yeah, I think the same. If I try to keep it all in our minds, and I think this is probably true for most women, we try to keep it all in our head and just there's something about writing it down, or I have a big whiteboard in my office. I'll just kind of brain dump everything that's in there. And then I can, like you said, consolidate, kind of group things together. Our brains do not have to hold it all. And I think that alone is a helpful burnout tool.
Yes, 100%. That's really good. Well, we have covered a lot today. We've talked about the Lord and our relationships and our priorities and our emotions. And really, when it comes down to it, all of us have so many people that we're loving and so many projects or places that mean so much to us. And we really do want to show up with all that we have in all of those things. But for so many of us, we can just feel overwhelmed. And I'm sure that there are women listening today who just need that encouragement and who need to feel they're not in it by themselves, but the Lord is walking it with them and wants to help them. Would you be willing to pray for them today?
I would love to. Lord, I just come to you and I'm so grateful that you have the ability to see us all and know us all. I lift up the people who are listening and just ask that you would make yourself so clear to them, that they would feel your presence, that they would think the things that are true that you have said, that you would just, be in their mind and their hearts. I also just want to lift them up and ask for clarity, that where there's overwhelm, you are a God who brings order to chaos, and life can feel very, very chaotic. And you may not remove the chaos, but you will just be with us in it. And so that's what I ask for, that your presence would be felt, that you would bring clarity to where it feels confusing, where there's lies or expectations that you have not placed on us. Would you just remove those from those who are listening to this? Would those lies and those false expectations just fall away? And would your truth be louder and stronger and clearer? I ask that you would just do the work that you do in bringing new seasons to people, that you restore what has been lost in old seasons, and that this would just be a conversation where it may start them thinking about what you have for them right now with their people and where you've placed them, that you would help them to see their good work that you have created them for, and that they would feel confident to walk in that. And so we just ask all these things in your name, Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Kelsie, this has just been a very practical and encouraging conversation. And I know that I find encouragement all the time just by following you on your socials and just kind of just watching. You're so purposeful with all the parts of your life, and that it just does so much good for me. So I'm going to be sure and put links in our socials so our listeners can keep learning from you too. And I'm just so grateful that you took the time to share with me today.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Thank you for asking me. That was such an honor for me. I think you and I have just clicked and connected on a lot of similarities and the things that we love and the way we operate. So I just loved getting a chance to talk with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to do it again sometime.
Yes, love that.
Yeah. You know what? I'm thankful for you two friends for joining me on the Growing Home Together podcast today. Rob and I would love to connect with you over on our site at growinghometogether.com. You will find all kinds of resources to help you share quality time with your kids and to pray with your husband and to build a closer relationship with Jesus. At Growing Home Together, we're caring for the soul of your family, and we're growing home together with you. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Growing Home Together podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and found some valuable insights to help you care for the soul of your family. Remember to check out growinghometogether.com for more resources, and stay tuned for our next episode coming your way soon.